Cinelli.
I'm as white as they come.
I was jumping off everything. I got handcuffed to.
I was so excited to just have real estate in my Facebook.
A good blip, but it was a blip.
If you had the friggin' discipline, it 100% was the best.
It was exhausting. It was. If you watch my videos from 2021, I don't even recognize myself.
You're on the show, and he's like, "What show?" I let my hair grow, I let my beard grow, but
But you didn't let your belly grow.
I'm actually not allowed to.
And this huge guy's pushing and pushing, and they're holding me down. He kicks the side of my nose, and I headbutt my buddy.
Oh,
we're Italian.
Yeah. From wine country to cottage country, real estate is all about lifestyle. I'm Andrew Perry, and welcome to That Fine Life. All right, welcome back to another episode of That Fine Life podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Perry. This is season 3, episode 2. We got David Cinelli.
Cinelli,
You know what, man? Like we were saying off air, I'm as white as they come. I mean, it's I have, my wife Gabe, she's Italian, and every time I bring her to like one of our Christmas parties, like on my side or whatever, it's always like an ice cream cake, and she's like, "What's up with the munch cakes and the ice cream cake?" And my father-in-law Joe, he owns a winery just down here.
I love ice cream cakes.
I don't know, but these guys are serious.
I'm a pretty white Italian, by the way. I played hockey growing up, and we downplayed the Italian because it's like in hockey you couldn't be Italian. Like it was the whites, like the munch cakes dominated the sport. So we were whitewashed, a lot of us.
But you know what? Because it's funny you brought that up because I had a teammate who was Italian. His dad owned a pizzeria, and but the guy who was the spunkiest kid out there, man, no taller than 4 feet, but he was the spunkiest kid out there. Yeah. And do you know Rick Regina at all? You might have seen him on.
I don't know if I know Rick. That name doesn't.
No,
ring
Nick. Yeah. So, anyways,
sorry, Nick Regina.
No, he owned.
I know John Regina.
Yeah. He owned a couple of clubs downtown Toronto and stuff like that, and he was Italian, and.
So you assume most Italians all know each other?
Well, yeah. Well, no, I just assumed the guy played soccer growing up, and I've known him now for a whole year. And he just told me, he's like, "No, I played only hockey." Really? I'm like, "See, there you go." Because like the Niagara Falls Italians, and nothing against the Niagara Falls Italians, but they're very they're sticking to their culture here.
Yeah, we noticed that too. Well, funny enough, I was drafted by Niagara Falls Thunder before they went
really?
to realtors. Yeah, I was like the last person drafted, so I know Niagara well. And when I was here too, and I saw the Italian culture, at some in some spots, it was like, yeah, you're more Italian than us. And but if you go back to us, like traditional, we were very traditional growing up. But our family played hockey. I played soccer in the summer a little bit. Baseball, we go back and forth. But my brother and I, we played hockey. Like it's not like I have an older brother who was handicapped, so he didn't play too many sports. But me and my middle brother, like I'm the baby. It was hockey, and we were playing hockey throughout all year. So it was the sport of choice. My dad loved hockey. He was never one of those guys to come home and watch soccer on TV. So I never really knew who Juventus was. I didn't, AC Milan. I didn't know any of that stuff until I went to high school, and I see all these Italians say Mike. So and we're sitting there and like all these wops, and they're all talking about soccer and stuff. And I'm like, soccer? What do you guys? I never paid our football.
But the funny thing is my dad was on the farm team for Dundee because he's from Scotland. So he still has a very thick accent, and that's all he did was football. And so he would just watch soccer, and I would go there and like, why does soccer have to be 3 hours? I don't understand it. So I'm just sitting there. That's your entire day. Yeah. So shifting gears. Oh, actually, no. There's something that you just mentioned there. So you're the youngest of 3?
3 boys. Yeah.
So I have 3 sons. 8. He's turning 8. 3, he's turning 4, and 2 is turning 3.
God bless.
Yeah.
I feel bad for you and your wife.
Well, yeah. Well, and the youngest kid too is like my middle child is pure munja cake, looks like me. He gets a rash if he touches anything. He's so white. And then my oldest and youngest are more olive skin, kind of like you, like nice full lips and stuff like that. And I'm like, damn, I wish I had full lips. and it's
Thanks for noticing.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, don't worry. I notice a lot of things. I'm very perspective. So, anyways, but my youngest son, he just looks at me. He's like, I'm like, this guy's the mafia. I don't know what he's doing, but he's planning something. And every time I turn my back, he hits me with something. The guy's insane. So, growing up with as a youngest.
Yeah.
Were you the insane one?
Always.
Yeah.
I remember.
Is it just to keep up with the bros, or?
I was just nuts. I remember like we moved when I was 2 years old. And I remember the first summer, my neighbor said to my mom, "This kid's not going to make it to 3." Like I was jumping off everything. I got my head caught in between her banister outside.
Yeah,
I got
I
chained
did that
myself.
too.
Like, I got handcuffed to, I don't know why. I just did stupid shit. Like
Yeah.
we'd go to like the hockey rinks and I'd be the kid that climb to the top of the stairs and jump. And they thought I was going to break my legs. My mom was just got me into sports just to get rid of my energy. So yeah, I was beating on my brothers and stuff. My middle brother fought back. Again, my oldest brother was born with a handicap, so it was a little unfair advantage.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, it was nuts. And I think now I've calmed down. I guess maybe like in my 40s I've calmed a little bit. But there's certain times that just you get a couple of drinks in me, I'm not so calm. But yeah, no, I think I think the third born is just like it's just reckless. Even parents, because you're firstborn, everything you're all like wrapped in bubble wrap, and you got the white gloves on. And by the time the third kid's rolling around, we're eating off the floor. Like, I don't care.
He eats literally off the floor. So okay, and then so how long you been in Toronto then? That's where you're selling?
Yeah. So I sell all over actually.
Yep.
Yeah. Even here, I'm going to be selling one in not Grimsby. We're going to be. Oh yeah, I think it's Grimsby. We're just on those talking to one of my clients on the way here.
Yep.
So yeah, I sell everywhere, but mostly my main focus is Toronto.
Yep.
Grew up in Toronto, and then the only time I left Toronto was when I had my scholarship to the States. We were in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Did that for 4 years. Came back and I bounced around from playing pro. Didn't really solidify anywhere.
Yep.
I came back. I was coaching hockey, and my dad was like, as a goalie coach, I was a goalie.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
And my dad was like, "Are you gonna start paying me room and board?" I'm like, "Why?" He goes, "I hate your lifestyle." He goes, "I didn't send you to school, get this degree," and I graduated with a business, so it's a bachelor of science, a business, and a math degree. And he's like, "I didn't send you to school to be a coach. Like, what are you doing with your life?" And anyway, long story short, he goes, "You go back to school." So I went back to school, did my MBA Laurier for a year, and then came back to Toronto and started working. So yeah,
nice.
And then when my wife and I got back together, we broke up a couple of times, and when we got back together, we decided to we bought a house in Etobicoke, and we've been back in Etobicoke, both South Etobicoke since.
Nice.
Well, Central South Etobicoke, yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah. And how long has that been that you've been with Royal LePage, right?
Yeah, I've been Royal LePage. So 2015 is when I was licensed. So I've been with Royal LePage since that time.
Yeah, nice. I got my license at like December because I'm so stupid. December 2016. And like I had to pay for the whole year behind me. Oh, and then I had to pay the next month for the next quarter. I was like, what? Why did I do that? Just I was so excited to just have real estate in my Facebook bio or something. So speaking of bios, I checked yours out. Was it top 10 in Royal LePage, Ontario?
2021 was a fantastic year.
yeah, it was. If you had the friggin' discipline, it 100% was the best.
It was exhausting. It was a fantastic year. Things were just going crazy.
Yeah.
And it was one of those years. I remember I got an award. I was supposed to get. So we had the top level, which was chairman's, and I was supposed to get chairman's that year. I actually ended up missing out by like $50,000.
Yeah.
My manager calls me. She's like, "You're not gonna believe this. You missed out." I'm like, "By what?" So it's like less than a deal, right? It kind of hurt. But anyway, but I remember so we were talking rewards, and said they were nominating me for that top award. And I said, "Okay, great." I got a phone call the next day from the broker of record, and he's like, "Oh, congratulations." I'm like, "Didn't we just talk yesterday?" He's like, "No, you made the top 10 in Ontario." I'm like, "What, for single agents?" Yeah.
Holy smokes!
So I wasn't even aware of that. So it was a nice, So I can still keep that in my bio. Yeah.
Well, 100%, absolutely.
I don't know if that's ever gonna happen. Like I love that. Like, now we have so many agents out there. Who knows that that's gonna happen again?
Yeah.
I would love, obviously every year I'm trying to kill it, but that was nice.
Yeah. Well, and I think if agents had any business sense, although it was a crazy year, they would have used that to build the foundations for the future. And that's why our team, even though 2022 and 2023 were like the slowest years on record, we had our best years every single year moving forward. Mm-hmm. And it's just because we knew that like it's easy when you've got all these leads coming in and all these transactions happening, it's easy to let them kind of slip through the cracks, and your follow-up game slips. And I remember that because I remember showing properties, and I had another group of buyers that I had to show like an hour later, and then group one wants to write an offer, and you've got to show group two, and everybody's antsy because they really want it, and that's how basically the team started. Is I'm like I can't do this anymore.
Yeah. So 2021, I had virtual assistants, but then we decided 2020 was when COVID hit, I used it as an opportunity to revamp my business. So My one virtual assistant, now she's a realtor. She learned I guess she learned a lot. Where she's edited my videos and everything out. And she was transitioning out. She wanted to be a realtor. And I said, okay, so I need to have somebody physically here. She's like, you outgrew me a year ago. You should have done this a year ago. I'm like, well, now's the time. It's COVID, right? So we interviewed and ended up getting my assistant, I think later part of 2021. And then she started and it just wasn't enough. I needed somebody else there. So I was like,
yes.
I was training with my trainer, and I've known her family. I used to coach her brother for hockey, and then I was talking with her dad, and she's like, well, business was crazy. Like, she just wasn't doing anything. I'm like, she's a smart girl. And I said, well, I need a buying agent to help me on these showings and and that's how we got her to start. Now she's mostly doing fitness. She's not doing really. She's licensed. She doesn't. She got there. And then I hired another girl. So she came to me as well. And like, again, as a buying agent. Now my assistant's on mat leave, and now she's doing dual roles.
Yes.
But it helps, right? So now I'm going on vacation, for example, in a week. So I love it because before I'd have to give my business to my colleagues and stuff too, and have to which is, again, I still compensate them.
Of course.
But I'd rather compensate somebody who works with me every single day.
Of course. You keep it in the umbrella.
Right. Exactly. So and they know more intimate of all my listings. And that's kind of how it started, right? It was 2021. I remember one morning I left to go, and I was like 8:30 or something in the morning. And I was with 5 groups of clients, and I got home at like 9:30, and that's right. Thank God I didn't have to write offers that day because I was delirious. I remember my wife was talking to me, and she goes, "What's wrong with you?" I'm like, "What?" She goes, "You sound like you're hammered." I'm like, "Man, I've been gone all day. I haven't had a thing to drink." She's like,
that's
you
right.
sound higher. I'm like, you're just running on fumes.
Yep.
So thank God I didn't put an offer in because, again, it was just one of those days. The next day we did, but it was one of those days. It was insanely busy.
Yep.
And that's how you grow, right? You just don't know.
Absolutely.
And so we've carried that through. And same with that. So 2021 was a fantastic year for most of us agents. But for example, like last year, there was only 66,000 sales, and some people are struggling. I had my second best year. 2023 was number 2.
Yep.
2021 is still, I'd love to be able to get to that number, but it was just one of those years where all the stars aligned. And I took it as an outlier. Again, if you take that out, and
100%.
my progression's been great. If you just take out 2021, because it looks like a blip.
Yeah.
A good blip, but it was a blip.
It was a good blip, but it forced us all to really take a look at all the holes in our business is what I found. Yeah. And then there's something else in your bio, HGTV host. What was that all about?
So HGTV, there was an open casting call. I think it was in 2018. And I, just had hired this videographer from New York.
Yeah.
His name's Kian Wong, and he was an Academy Award nominee for some of his short stories that they did. So this guy was great. So he was promoting, and he was just targeting certain realtors. And I remember I looked at it, and I was like, this guy seems interesting. I know I got to do more videos.
Yeah.
So I hired him for like 10 grand. We did like 4 videos together. And one of them was like a lifestyle video, like who I was and where I came from. So this open casting call came in 2018. They're like, are you a realtor? Somebody sent it to me.
Yeah.
Are you good on camera? Do you think you'd be good? So I sent it in with that, which Kian helped me with that video, a little bit of a bio, which he helped me write anyway. It just the stars aligned. Great. Didn't hear it. They're like, okay. And then I had a follow-up interview like, oh, you've been shortlisted. Okay. Didn't really tell us what the show was about or anything. It was just kind of like, there's a show coming up. We might be interested. Okay. And then, so we did the video interview, and then didn't hear anything from them until like April, a year later. And they called me up and they said, hey, remember that interview you did? They're like, you got the gig. I'm like, for what?
Who is this?
This again, like, I'm like, is this a joke? And it's like, no, so you made it. You're going to be on HGTV. And it was, So they basically, what they wanted to create was like $1 million listing, Toronto.
Right.
That's kind of what they wanted to do. And like, so the high-end pictures and stuff too. And it was great. It took up a lot of time, but I'll be honest with you, it does. But it was, so they cast 5 of us. 2 of them were cast even a couple of years before us. And they kind of put on the back burner. But the funny thing was like, we recorded all of, basically starting in 2019, then recorded most of it up until October. We had to do it. And it was a fantastic experience and blah, blah, right? And at Christmas time, they're talking about season 2. They're doing these parties. I'm like, we're getting some great feedback. Everything's happening great. Well, when are we launching this thing? And we couldn't say anything to anybody until HGTV told us. And it was like February 2020. Fantastic.
Yeah.
So they literally, we go on air and the world shuts down.
Yeah.
So the funny thing is, like, we had some positive responses with the show. So it was called Hot Market.
Yep.
5 of us were co-hosts. I think out of the 8 episodes, I think I'm featuring like 3 or 4 of them or something like that. So we all had our own little segments. Didn't get all 5 of us every time, but we were talking and everything. Again, and it was fantastic. We loved it, but it did take up some time, but I would still love to do it. But what happened was because of 2020, HGTV had to figure out where they're going to put their advertising dollars.
Yeah.
There was like 10, I think, there was like 10 shows of which were on the bubble. And some of them already started production. So that I said, okay, so once they allowed people to start recording again, they gave those 3 shows, said, okay, we're already halfway through, continue. Then there was some definite no's. And there was like 2 or 3 of us that were like a maybe. We might going to have a second season. And they kept us engaged for a number of years. And then like this, ever like, okay, they still haven't said no. Until this day, they still haven't said no. But but there hasn't been a yes for a second season.
Maybe they'll compete against Prime. Because I was talking to Brett Stark the other day, actually, and he had a very similar story where it's just kind of a fluke email kind of dropped in his email box, and, you know, he didn't hear from them. He auditioned, and, you know, a year or 2 goes by, and they're just like, yeah, you're on the show. And he's like, what show? and so that's coming out. I don't know what it's called. Have you heard about it or anything?
No, not yet.
I had something
the funny
on
thing
Prime,
is, Natalie and I, my wife and I, we don't watch a ton of television. Like
me
most of the things we buy, so most things we'll watch is like shows like are on that there's no commercials. So like Netflix,
yes, of
Prime,
course,
and all that stuff. I still remember on HGTV, I asked like, who's your favorite HGTV like host? And I'm like, I don't really watch HGTV. I like Brian Balmer. I liked his stuff, but I didn't at that time. We don't sit down as a family and watch TV. And that's like, and most of the time we watch shows the kids aren't. We don't watch them with them either, right? Or it's in this day and age, it's like we love all sports, so we watch a lot of sports. So
it's just a lot of sports.
Yeah. So if people ask me about TV shows, I'm like, I don't know. I still haven't seen all of our episodes on HGTV. I hate watching myself on TV, but that's another thing. Yeah.
So it did air.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay. Good.
We were on. So it started February 3rd, and we were on HGTV.ca, and then we were online, and then. They sold us. They always so the thing with these shows is how they make money is through syndicates, right? And they sell
absolutely.
They sold them like us to South Africa, so like you might get some followers from South Africa, which was fantastic. And then now we're on Hulu too, so we're still on Hulu, in the States. So we were on HGTV. Yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah. So I did a show. I don't know what I'm allowed to say either, but it will be on A&E. And then I did 2 or 3 episodes. But you're right, I was there like 3 days in a row, 17 hours. The one day, and I'm very interested to see how it turned out, but the one day I went out for dinner.
Yeah. Went
back to the hotel, and I had vicious food poisoning. I could not sleep a wink, right? And so I show up like 5-10 minutes late, and my face is like green. And they had the most like support for me, and they're like, "Are you sure you want to do this?" I'm like, "Well, what are we gonna do? Like, it will mess up everything because it's up north. We did one in Niagara on Lake, one in Muskoka, and I'm just interested to see how it turned out. But you're right.
But makeup does a lot, and editing does a lot. I'll tell you that.
You know what? Budget was tight. There was no makeup. There was no makeup.
Well, on our show it was hilarious because it's like our director got pissed off because he goes when he does their shows with the females because there's 2 males, 3 females, and he's like they always had makeup, and he goes, why don't you have when my wife was on the show, of course the makeup girls were there because my wife's on a couple of my episodes, and then if I had some of my clients, like he goes, if it was just by myself, he goes, why don't you have makeup? He was so mad. So he talked to HGTV and like, Dave needs, and I'm shiny, right? I'm Italian, right? Like the olive skin. He's looking at me and he's like, anybody else on the show, goes, you need some makeup because you're shiny. So
they come in with those like weird tap things for your. I know.
I'm probably shining on the show right now, but like it was funny. But so we had a little bit of we had a pretty good budget too. But you're right. Like there was one episode it was in, I think it took 20 minutes, and it was with the buying clients we had, right? And we showed 3 properties, and then we had to do like the reveal of which one they got, which one they didn't get, right? And each house took a day to record.
Of course, yeah.
So there was 4 days of recording. Plus, and a couple times later on, they edit things in now because they're like, we didn't like how you said this. Can you say this? And so we and then we had to do some reshoots and other shoots. So all in all, I think of 20-minute episode took 4 days plus.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of time.
I know. The worst is I don't know how your process was, but we had to. You're talking through all the houses, right? So you're doing the recap, And then my job was, and I had to be there, even though I was like food poisoning. I wanted to just fall asleep. And in the camera, he's like, "Okay, wake up." I'm like, oh my God. Anyways, but because you're like, yeah,
Yep. Sure.
yeah, and you have to do it because they need somewhere to look, right? And I'm like, oh my God, but that was the torturous part.
I think what took us so long too, because they had this new high-end cameras and stuff too. So everything we did, they wanted to do different angles. So we almost had to say the same thing 3 times.
Yeah.
And every time it was different because they go, you can talk about different things, but it was funny. But it was like, so I don't know. Hopefully we're not ruining this, but live TV, like reality TV, is not real. Like in that kind of sense.
I don't think
it's
you're
not.
ruining
We
it,
weren't scripted by any chance,
Yeah.
but it wasn't like. We're like, well, we liked how you said this, like, and then we would rearrange it.
Yeah, of
So
course.
we would say the same thing like 3 times or different variations of it.
Yeah. Okay.
Every single scene. So that's what took so long.
Yeah. It's interesting process. So you've got a podcast.
Yep.
DC Talks.
DC Talks with David Cinelli. Yeah.
Yeah. So I remember when it first came out, it wasn't too controversial.
No.
No.
We started off.
What happened with the switch?
So what happened was that I started off. I wanted to do like more. I thought more real estate content. I thought right in the beginning it was like like, and people weren't talking. There wasn't as many podcasts. Now everyone like now realtors. I guess our office is pushing it too. Everyone should have a podcast.
Yeah.
And telling people how to do it on their own. And we started talking about real estate stuff, and I was just like, okay, and was getting some good feedback. It was pretty good, and it was like I talked about stuff, and I'm like, but then we had an episode where I kind of touched on my brain surgery, right? So I don't know if you remember, I had brain surgery. Yeah, so I had brain surgery in 2022. Found a fluke, right? So I talked a little bit, and like, so my podcast guys are like, there was a spike when you talked about something personal.
Yes.
I was like, okay, like, would you be open to talking about the episode of what happened in your brain surgery? And I said, absolutely. So I did a whole episode of what happened, right? If you want, it's a long story short. I was having this noise in my ear, and it was sounding like. So I go to the bathroom in the middle of the night. Like when noises around here, like when everything if there's noise and music, you don't hear it. Didn't hear anything,
of course.
Right? And it was like I'd wake up at 2:00 in the morning, go to the bathroom, and then I was hearing this voice, but I thought it was the vent, right? And then I go to bed, and I'm like, I can still hear it. I put my head down again because at 2:00 in the morning, nothing's happening.
Right.
We have 3 cats; they're not running around crazy. We have 2 kids; they're not running. Everyone's just quiet, and I was hearing this noise, and I was like, oh, and then I realized it was in my head. So it's right behind my ear. So when I went to talk to my doctor and I said, hey, what's going on here? And she's like, well, it could be a couple things. One, just go to an ears, nose, and throat doctor. I'm like, but there's nothing wrong with my hearing. They're like, oh, just go. So I went, and of course, the ears, nose, and throat doctor said, your hearing's perfect.
Yeah.
No shit.
Yeah.
And like no real follow-up or anything, right?
Yeah.
So fast forward. So it was about, I don't know, this is probably like 3 years ago or something. And a little bit of history of what happened. So my dad had passed away from a heart attack. Oh, so basically heart failure, not heart attack. It was an attack, right? In 2014. And at the time, I was like saying, I wanted to do a full body check and just never was able to. And it was like, I want to check my heart. My grandfather died at 45, massive heart attack. My dad dies, had bout with heart disease. My uncle had triple bypass on one side. The other one's had bypass. So we have... So we just have bad luck with hearts. Yeah. So I've always wanted to know what's going on. And in 2020, the world shut down, I was like, I wasn't feeling good. And if you look at my videos, I was fat. Like it was like I'd gain, like I work out every day. Yeah. But when the world shut down, couldn't work out as much. I just haven't felt, so I was gaining weight. Yep. But it wasn't just that. It was like I would eat something and it would burn. Like, so there's some signs going on, and I'm like, there's something wrong. Yeah. And my financial planner was a really good friend of mine. His name is Jason Pereira. He's been telling me about this clinic. It's kind of like an MCAN, but they do. But it's called Deerfields, and it was like, it's a preventative care, and apparently it's even better than MCAN. It's just fantastic. So I'm like, fine, I'm gonna bite the bullet. Let me do the full body scan, spend the money, which is it's not cheap, right?
Yeah,
it's almost a few grand to do it, right? Yep. But I'm like, screw it, let me just do it from head to toe, and then maybe we'll see what they say. And so they do the full body scan. Like they start with everything. So you're there for like 6 or 7 hours. They take your blood. They talk about your lifestyle. And then you have to do ultrasound on all your organs and all this stuff. And one of the things after they do the lifestyle, you go meet with the doctor, and he kind of gives you a little bit of a physical. And he asks too, he's like, is there anything else ailing you? And I said, well, I'm getting this noise in my ear. And all of a sudden he stops and he looks at me and he's like, what did your doctor say? And I'm like, she sent me an ears, nose, and throat doctor. And he's like, well, what did they say? The same thing said to you.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with the hearing. He goes, of course there's nothing wrong with your hearing.
Yeah.
He goes, would you be open to do a CAT scan or CT scan? I said, yes. Why? He goes, Dave, that sounds like an aneurysm. Are you fucking kidding me? Like an aneurysm? He goes, yeah. He goes, that sounds like a precursor to an aneurysm. Would you be willing to do it? So I did the CT scan. They found something. Had to do an MRI and MRA, which are two different ones. And then this was like, but we found out it was an AVM, which is basically a cluster of cells in the back of my head, which I akin it to, you ever watch Tom and Jerry when you were a kid?
Yeah.
And you know, the hose on the side. So they hook up the hose and Jerry would tie up a hose, would tie a knot, and they would turn on the hose and the water would build pressure and it would explode. Well, that's what was happening on the right side of my brain.
Wow.
And the left side was, because you only need basically one side. It's like having two kidneys. They said, you know, basically this side was compensating and draining the blood out, but that's what you were hearing. You were hearing the blood vessels behind your ear. And you could feel when I Peloton hard, I was feeling this pressure and I would hear it in my ears. And yeah, so anyway, that's a long story, but longer story, hopefully shorten it up.
Thanks for sharing.
This was, I think we found out in June, Father's Day weekend. We ended up at a consultation with a neurosurgeon, and in July, and then August 31st, they went in through my wrist, my neck, and put 8 coils in my brain, glued it all up.
Wow.
I got to stay overnight, and they immobilized it. And
so was it a type of cancer at all, or
no? It was They have no idea.
Yeah.
So this AVM can happen to everybody. The problem is it goes undetected for most people. Yeah. And this noise is, I'm like, so now they're cautious. So basically I'm saying, if you're an advocate, if there's something wrong with your body, go find out what's going on.
Oh, 100%.
And because I went to this clinic, listen, I've lost weight, you know, like I'm healthier now, like I'm like all my numbers are through the roof, like it's just like in a great way, like it's just positive. But they saved my life because I kept pushing. What's wrong with this? I knew something was up, but I didn't think of it. But no, it wasn't a cancer. They think it might have been some sort of trauma. I had to, I was a goalie.
Yeah.
Either I got in that or I had a car accident back in 2001, I think it was. And me and my brother and I we were hit really hard from behind. Yeah. It could have been that.
Interesting. So I wonder what the correlation with the food and the heartburn and all that too. I wonder.
I don't know, because I don't know if it was the brain reacting that way. I don't know if it was the way, I don't know if it was God sending me a message saying, hey, you need to go check something out. It could be a whole bunch of everything. So I think, but because they put me on the diet, intermittent fasting, less alcohol, less red meat, all this more fish and like veggies, and it was just, I don't know. I think everything just kind of came together in once, and then I think I needed to lose the weight in order to do the surgery. Also helped because the recovery was much better. Yeah. It was I was over 250 pounds at one point.
Holy shit!
If you watch my videos from 2021, I don't even recognize myself.
Me neither. I let my hair grow. I let my beard grow, but
you didn't let your belly grow, so it's all right.
Yes, well, yeah, I was up to 200 pounds.
Come on.
Yeah, and then in 2021, I took it serious again and lost 30 pounds in 2 months, and then so now I went down to 180, and then I wanted to put more muscle on, so I'm up to 190. Nice. But we don't have each other on Facebook, just Instagram. So there's probably a lot about me that you don't know, especially in the last little bit. So I was diagnosed with JAK2, which is a blood cancer, December 20th of last year, so 2023. So
I'm sorry to hear that. Everything okay?
Yeah, man. Thanks. I appreciate that. So what happened is, and you're talking about listening to your body. So what happened was in August or September, I posted a little picture of me on the Instagram stories after a workout, and I'm like, I'm dead. I'm just tired. So a good friend of mine, he's like, man, he knows me from school, and he's like, dude, you're only 35, 36? I'm like, yeah, 35. 36 at the time, sorry. And he's like, you should not be experiencing this. He's like, you should, especially how healthy you are. He's like, go talk to my private doctor. So mine is Qatar Health. So I ended up hiring a private doctor, same thing. And he's like, go see if you could get some testosterone or maybe hormones or, thyroid, maybe something's wrong. So I go.
Testosterone was awesome. I do it every day. By the way, it's awesome.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, the cream. I use the cream.
So I'm actually not allowed to. And so here's why. So I hire her. I explain, things that I've always gone through, and I've always had like gut problems. They thought I had an ulcer in college, and they wanted to stick a camera down my throat. I was too big of a bitch, so I didn't go, and it kind of went away. And I was kind of doing new things, and things were working. But every once in a while, I'll have like once a week, I'd have vicious like heartburn and like gas, like bad. And so, anyways, she's like, okay, this sounds like. I know what this is. Go do the scope. I'm like, okay. Then she reset my gut. I was on chicken bone broth for 60 days, then biomes for another 90 days. And she's like, but in order to see if you're eligible for testosterone, because testosterone can raise your platelets. So she's like, we just need to do some of your standard blood work, build your profile. So I said, okay. So we do the first set, and she's like, oh, man. She's like, your platelets are really high. I'm like, what do you mean high? She's like, they're 600. I'm like, what's normal? She's like, 150 to 300.
Holy.
And I'm like, okay. And then she's like, I want to do more tests. So we went back. I did like 12 different blood samples and, urine, ultrasounds. And she's like, yeah, they went up to 720. What the hell is going on? So I'm like, well, what the hell could it be? She's like, I'm really not sure. She's like, diabetes maybe, and then this and that. I'm like, holy smokes. And then she sends me to a hematologist, so a blood doctor. And I had no idea. She's like, I sit down. She's like, do you know why you're here? I'm like, I have like stomach problems and my platelets are high. I'm really not sure. She's like, no. She's like, Angel, like this could mean that you might have cancer. I'm like, holy shit. And then she's like, lymphoma, leukemia, or something called JAK2. Luckily, it's JAK2, which is the worst or the least out of all three. And then so I said, well, what do I do? She's like, we're going to have to do a bone marrow biopsy. I'm like, holy smokes.
I had to do all this for my brother. My brother had leukemia, but we'll get into that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I know all about this, unfortunately.
Yeah, so she did it, and she's like, it's going to be very painful. I'm like, oh, my gosh. So when we did it, it actually wasn't as painful as she was setting it up to be, but because I'm young and my bones are healthy, she was like, ugh. And she's like this, Asian doctor, and her arms are like this big. She was awesome, but she couldn't get it in. She's like, I need a bigger needle. And so they drill and they put a needle and they syringe out the bone,
That's
the blood.
The worst, right?
Yeah.
Because when they tell you, sorry, I was my donor for my brother. My brother had non-Hodgkin's on the lymphoma. Basically, it was pretty serious, and I had to give my bone marrow. Like, so we're testing.
Yeah.
And I ended up having not to go into my bone marrow to give him the test. Like, we ended up doing this controversial blood thing anyway. But I had to do the test. So he was in one room, I was in the other room. And the doctor comes in, and she's like, so very similar to yours. And she's like, so your mom's in the room with your brother. And I'm like, because he's gone into shock. Yeah. Because they had to go in. And by this time, he's already depleted because he's already been on all of the radiation and all that shit. So he was like, he was tiny at that point. Like, he had lost so much weight and stuff. So, and like, so the problem with him is they had to pull a piece of bone out of his pelvic, out of his pelvis. Sorry. And, because they did that, we went into shock. And they're like, shit. Okay, so for you, we just need to go in, do the syringe. Yeah. Because the hardest part is we're going to freeze it, and we're going to go in, and we're just, once it's in there, it's usually easier. Bullshit. So I had this huge guy, and they had to hide me down because hockey players, they don't tell you that our pelvic area is very strong because you're in a squat position your whole life.
That makes sense.
So even for my brother, it took them to, because even though his bones had gotten more frail, he was still very hard to get into. Wow. And the guy, so they put in this injection in my pelvic area. Yeah. And first of all, you feel it, like you feel the injection. I'm like, oh shit, that hurt, right? And then you feel the needle hit, right? And you couldn't get in, and it was scraping. Yeah. And because they can only freeze the local area,
you feel it.
Like, this is similar to you, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And this huge guy's pushing and pushing, and they're holding me down. The nurse comes, she goes, "You want to hold my hand?" And I'm like, "Bitch, you get that hand away from me. I'm going to break every bone in that bone." And I was like, holy, like, it was the most pain. And he finally pops it in. You hear a pop. I'm like, oh. I'm like, okay, the hard part is over. Well, that's bullshit because your bone marrow is so dense. Sorry, so I guess dense. I mean, like, it doesn't flow, right? They have to extract. So when they pulled, did you feel that when they pulled the needle back? It was, oh my god, it was. I was screaming.
I had one instance where I thought she hit a nerve because my whole leg, and I'm like, oh my gosh. But she's like, we're gonna take a very small fragment of bone. I'm like, okay, so I'm thinking like microscopic. She's like, do you want to see it? I'm like, yeah, sure. It was this big.
Yeah.
I was like, holy smokes, man, that came right out of me.
And that doesn't grow back, right? Even the
No.
whole, so the what they did for me, thank God, because they said if you had to do the traditional way to donate your brother for the bone marrow, we would have to put you under and do that one little thing you did over there like 22, 23 times, and putting a hole in your pelvic, like your body doesn't recover from that.
Yeah.
You will always see the hole. So thank God at the time, this is 2003. I keep saying 2003.
I know, yeah.
They had this new controversial medication, which now I think they run to everybody else, but they're only offering it to family members. But what it was like you had to get an injection 3 days or 4 days before you were to donate. And what it does make you feel like, it made you feel sick, because what it is, it got all your stem cells out of your blood system, or pull a out or your bone marrow out of your bone marrow and put it into your blood system, because it's a foreign object in your body. It felt like you had the flu for 3 days.
Yeah.
And what we did from there is they had this big catheter coming out of this arm, and then it went into like a spinner, and it took out all the stem cells, and whatever the blood it didn't need, it would go back in through a warmer and go into this arm. So it's like you're doing an oil change for 3.5 hours. It was really cool. Yeah.
So
Don't recommend it, but it was really cool.
Yeah. No, but you know what?
So did you have to do other treatments?
No. So basically, it's there in the background, and I have to get blood work every 1 to 3 months.
Mm-hmm. Do you manage it? Was it pills you manage it? Diet?
Just aspirin. So
aspirin, really?
It's for blood thinning. Because at first, when she first said it, she's like, you're at risk for blood clot and stroke. I'm like, that fucking vaccine, I knew it. I literally messaged her. I'm like, is this the vaccine? I'm like, is it? And we don't really know, but because I had my whole life insurance the year before, my platelets were a little high, but the whole life insurance, they didn't see a problem with it. And then I had 2018 and 2016. And nobody's ever told me this, but I've always had high platelets.
Yeah.
So, but the platelets were like 450. So did the vaccine happen to take it from 450 to 700? Yeah. I don't know.
I try not to talk about, because I know some people get polarized because of the vaccine. And like, I was kind of quiet about it, but I didn't get the vaccine.
My wife didn't either. She was pissed that I did.
I was pissed my wife did the first shot, but the reason why I didn't do the vaccine, and it was funny, and I'm not an advocate of yelling at people. First of all, it was, and I found out afterwards it would have killed me. What happened with my brain, my broker of record heard his daughter was going through a whole bunch of stuff, and she's 14 years old, and she almost didn't live, and they had to go in her brain, a bunch of stuff. His neurosurgeon, he told my story, he goes, if Dave would have had the vaccine, he would have died. Because with, I guess, the sticky proteins, or if they would have, and because I didn't know I had, because the stickiness of the spike proteins, and also the blood clots would have killed, because it wasn't something that I was going through that I knew I had.
Yeah.
So if you're sick, you would have been a little precautious. Anyway, so the reason why I didn't do it is like, we had a history of heart disease as in our family. So when people were getting the vaccine, they're going off, and I was like, can I just wait to see it? And because we didn't need to get it through urea, we didn't need to get it. I just said, okay, well, let's see what the side effects are. And with people coming back with heart issues, and I'm like, with the risk of that too, I'm just like, no. So I even called my doctor, and I said, is there any way to get a medical exemption? She's like, well, I can lose my license. I'm like, but I could die. She's like, why don't you get the shot and see how your body reacts? And then when I talked to the neurosurgeon, he goes, yeah, you would have been dead. And I'm like, so I was not, that doctor missed so much. Like, this is like, guys, again, not to talk bad about our medical system. They are good, but unless you're sick or you're dying, like if you're not sure, like, the system's not great. But if you're sick and dying, it's a fantastic system. Of course. But I always push people to advocate for themselves, because only you know yourself. So my gut, well, again, was God, or was it my God? I don't know. They were saying, like, just hold off to see what it was. Yeah. And now in retrospect, it's just like, look how many people are dying.
That's right.
And they're all of a sudden suddenly dying of heart attacks. And then I'm like, are you guys not correlating? Yeah. Are you not correlating this? And if you did you know 50% of the people that get myocarditis from the shot never recover from it? They'll have it for the rest of their lives. Yeah. So we already have heart issues in our family. Could you imagine adding that to the, like, I would be a ticking time bomb.
And the thing is, the only reason why I got it is I speak a lot for real estate. and I needed to get one. I needed it to get on the airplanes, as well as they would not allow me inside the hockey arena to bring my kids to hockey. I'm like, I can't interrupt them. But I didn't. I waited for the whole 2 years until literally they put the ban on going to places. I'm like, this is fucked. I really felt like it went against everything that I, believed in, and I've been regretting it ever since.
Well, there's the other thing too is that people ask like me, why didn't you get the fake and stuff? And I was like, well,
I don't.
So, like,
didn't want to do that either. Yeah,
exactly. Listen, I don't lie, and my clients, I'm not good at lying.
Yeah.
I couldn't do that with a straight face. I can't also teach my kids not to lie, not to steal.
Of course.
And we're doing this. And what happens if you would have got caught? That's what I said.
And
like,
they went,
you could, what, jail time? Like you're frauding the government.
At the time, they put you in that fucking hotel or whatever.
Oh yeah, like there's so I at that point I said, listen, I'd rather be the scum of the earth and be an unvaccinated scum, but at least I know I'm like that's a problem. Like that, I'll do that as opposed to being pretending to be, and it's not going to help. Like so it's because there's going to be fake numbers. Everyone says they're vaccinated. They're like anyway. It was just it was a very controversial time, and people forget it. Like a couple of years later, how bad it was.
Yeah,
we my wife and I were not allowed anywhere.
Yeah. We were treated like shit because, I mean, like I said, I waited till the very last moment. And even when I got my first shot, it was past the ban. So, so I still had to wait a couple of weeks. And it was just such a weird feeling. And, I don't know. I just really, it seems like people are waking up, though. I wrote a post on Facebook just 2 days ago, exactly what you're talking about. You need to take ownership for your own life and your own health. And, it got shared like hundreds of times. There's like hundreds of comments. And it was all the same thing. It's like, yes, okay, a free healthcare system, okay. Great. That works for your, either small things or for the big things. But when you're still in that limbo stage, that's how people die, because there's things that are not diagnosed or you're waiting for results, and the main point was, okay, look, hire a private doctor. But I got my lab results back. I got appointments booked super quickly. They send you referrals. So no matter where you need to go or who you need to see, you get to see them quick. And I was very surprised because this was all within a 30 to 45 day period, from blood tests to extra blood tests, extra CT scans, extra ultrasounds, biopsy, results.
Well, it's funny because I was doing a podcast before Christmas, and I think I got COVID. It was in November. I didn't know I had it again because, again, COVID affects your brain. And that's the only difference I would say between like the flu and stuff. But I was doing a podcast with a colleague, and I went to get blood taken because every 3 months I get blood and weight and all that. So they take blood and they monitor us. And that morning I went and I got my blood, which is normal. And I'm talking with her. It was if you look with Amy Gilmore.
I'm talking.
She's great. Yeah, I love Amy. And so Amy and I are talking, and I don't even know if she noticed, but my eyes started to do this when I was talking with her, and then I had to take a deep breath, and I looked the way she was talking, and I had to get a glass of water because I almost threw up. And it was like something was messing with my head. And I'm like, oh, shit. And then Joey Walters, another buddy of mine, which I played hockey, another realtor, he came. So we do podcasts for one day, and then we do it for the month, right? And so we have, and then so this is the Wednesday. So Joey came in after Amy, and Joey just gave me a hug, and then literally his ear touched my ear, and I had this shooting pain. Remember, the right side of my head is where my coils are, all through the right side of my head, and I almost dropped to the floor. I'm like, this is not good. So I called my doctor, and I said, this is what's going on. They're like, anybody else, we would say it's probably like a flu or something like that. So they set me up with my MRIs, and I had to do 4 MRI, 3 of one for my shoulder, 3, and it matters if I got my results back. They're like, everything's fine. It must have been the virus, but I was talking to other people. They've been waiting 6 to 8 months to get MRI. It's for us because it was Christmas. I had to wait 45 days. But other than that, it's like they're like, oh, this should have been done quicker. They were getting mad, and I'm like, it's okay. It's Christmas time. Like that's no, like they were upset. It took 45 days. Yeah. So again, like I'm sure, like people say, well, it's not as expensive you think for your health. I think every year I pay over $3,000. I think.
Mine is $780 a quarter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're around 28. So it's around So it's around for that $3,000. But people spend money on stupid stuff all the time,
right?
And shit they don't need. And I'm like, and you're neglecting your health. You think $3,000 a month for your health? It just blows my. And my wife too, right? Like she doesn't like talking about her. She went to the clinic too. Like her hormones were off. She went to our doctor and she's like, I feel like lethargic. Same thing you. Like she checks her iron level, and they're like, because it was in the parameters, but she was on the very last piece of that parameter, like the piece. She went to our clinic. They're like, it's not like you don't have, like, it's not your irons, like, somewhat there. Like, she had almost no iron. They almost had to give her, they were supposed to give her a transfusion. That's how low an iron was. It took her a month on vitamins and iron pills at a different level just to bring her back to normal. And she was like suffering like this for 2 or 3 years. We thought it was psychological.
Yeah.
People don't realize how much hormones affect your overall like state of mind, your feeling. Your, like, I remember talking with her, I put my hand on her, and it was like, she didn't like to be touched.
Yeah.
And it was really, I'm like, and I was
it's
hormones.
agitating. You're just everything. Yeah.
And it was affecting her mood. Like, she was like, sorry. So my wife's a go-getter, right? Like, she's she's on her 3rd company now. Like, she's just very like, she's animated. She's got like, she's a beautiful person, right? I lost her for 2 years and we didn't know what it was. We tried to get in to see psychiatrists. We tried to talk to them because we didn't realize, we thought it was all the fucking hormones, and nobody would even, her doctor, like, is looking at the numbers, like, because it was in those parameters, thought it was fine.
Yeah.
But even for myself, like, I had to go to a naturopath. I said, can you test me for testosterone? Because I'm feeling lethargic.
Yeah.
He's like, well, you're on normal levels. I'm like, what's a normal level? And I was in like the 300s, 350s. Yeah. And he's like, so when I went to my clinic, they're like, yeah, it's normal for 44. I was 44 at the time, for a 44-year-old man. But he goes, but optimal level's over 700.
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to be in a bodybuilder in the thousands. You're going to get hard, like, because that's where they get issues with the steroids, all that stuff too. Yeah. But just by using a little bit of the testosterone cream, it brought me up like an extra 100. Gives you more energy. It allows you to build like more lean.
Is the cream that good?
Yeah, you have to write. I rub it on my scrotum every morning. I know it's funny. It's I shower. I put it on there. People laugh. So my cousins went to the clinic. I have buddies. They do the injections instead.
Yep. And
they have to, like, I don't know. It's the cream. You put cream on your hands and stuff too. It's like literally, it's a daily thing, and it's like, again, it just brings it up just a little bit. It gives you a little bit extra. And again, so apparently men over 30 years old, especially because of the foods that we eat, all the preservatives, all the lack of the sedentary lifestyle we have, like, we're not gathering, we're not doing work in the fields. It's like your testosterone levels drop. And even though I work out every day, my testosterone was good, but it was fine, but it wasn't like optimal. And it's funny. I'm like, what the hell? Right. And it was like, so it helps bring it up to a level that it's better. It's still not optimal, but again, I don't like, but there are also side effects you have to worry about too.
Yes.
Of course. Worry about acne, and you have to worry about hair, and you have to worry about hair loss, and there could be other
and having more kids too.
Right. So I asked my doctor too, is that going to be a problem? And he's like, are you looking to have kids? He goes, it could be if you like, you're on such a small dosage.
Yeah.
He goes, but he goes, if you want to have kids, just tell me, just take it off. Well, we can, reduce it or just take it off for a couple of months and stuff. I'm like, no, I don't, like, my wife and I are good. We don't need more kids. And I don't do any surgeries you don't need to do. So I also never got, I don't agree with the vasectomies. I'm sorry. All my buddies have doing it. I'm just I am just not. I read something in an article once about vasectomies. Yeah. And it's like,
it's enough to throw you off.
Besides the whole, like, people are like, well, like, your wife's going in pain for health, for childbearing. Are you worried about that? I'm like, no. And it's like, because think about it, like, women only can have children up to a certain age.
Of course.
We men can have babies forever.
Yeah.
My wife doesn't like I say this. I was like, what happens if you get hit by a car? What happens if you get hit by a bus? And I was like, I love you. I'm just like, say something tragic happens to you. And in a few years, I get a girlfriend who's like in her 20s and wants to have a kid. I don't want to have to reverse the vasectomy to have all these issues. She doesn't like that story, but it's true. But I think about it. But what I read about this article was, and people can verify this, I just read this once, and again, it just stuck in my brain. Yeah. So I think it's called the vas deferens, which is what they cut off the vas deferens, but the sperm has to go somewhere. So what happens, instead of it going out your urethra, it gets absorbed into your body, right? So that's what happens with your sperm.
Interesting.
But think about it, your sperm's not supposed to be absorbed in the rest of your body.
Right.
So it's a foreign object in your body, like yourself, like your cancer, like everything is in there. So your platelets go up. Your body's, every time you have sex, it's like your body's going to be, your immune system is on high gear because it's fighting off something that's not supposed to be in that system. Right. Which they're doing studies, and it's like, well, men that have vasectomies that have a really active sex life are apparently more sick than they're not. And I was like, really? And I'm like, so my wife's going to be 45. I'm like, I don't know if she's childbearing. Like, I don't know if she's still going to be fertile for how much longer, but I think we can hold off for a couple more years. We've been, we've been together since we were like, I was 18, right? So we only have 2 kids, no scares, like, we got pregnant. We're like, I'm like, I think we can hold off, that I'm not a huge proponent and think that's one of the surgeries,
Yeah,
Doesn't
it
make
makes me
sense.
nervous. Makes me nervous.
I'm supposed to have a nose surgery done. I still haven't done that. I'm like, and that's I need to do that. I still haven't done that.
Oh, for like deviated septum? Or?
Yeah, I broke my nose about 9 times.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can barely breathe. Yeah, it's not great.
Yeah,
but while they're in there, they're supposed to shave it down, make a nose what it's supposed to be. But I don't know. I don't know. Then you get into the situation. Do you change your face because like the Jennifer Grey, where she was like, Dirty Dancing, it's beautiful. Like her nose was so awkward, and then that was her character. And then she gets his nose changed. She's beautiful, and nobody wants to hire her because she's no longer.
She's not unique anymore. Yeah, I know. I know because Gabriella. She always like, can a puck just like, because I play hockey too, like 1 to 3 times a week still, and she's like, can puck just come and smash me in the nose so I can fix this thing? I'm like, what's wrong with your nose? But like her whole family is like, yeah, wait, they just make fun of themselves for having a big nose.
We're Italian.
Yeah,
you look like I'm not Roman, but you have a Roman nose. I'm like, well. It is what it is, right? So like I broke my nose the first time in grade 4, so I've known this nose since then. It's shifted, it's cracked, it's not straight, it's like it changes, right?
Yeah.
One of the last times I broke my nose, we were in university, and I almost had the U.S. pay for my nose. We were drunk, obviously, so it was like I was on the hockey team, we're on the varsity team. Rookies had to hold hands. We had a local bar we went to, and it was like January.
Nope.
So in our town, we're in Stevens Point, Wisconsin. It's a university town, so when the school's in, everything's vibrant, everything's happening. People are in the bars. Well, during Christmas break, so we had to come back early to play hockey. There was nobody in the bars. And our local bar was called JL's. We were the only guys in the bar. It was like a Sunday night. There's nothing else to do. There was no school to go to. Yeah. We finished our game, so we went drinking. And we only had practice in the morning. So the seniors decided, we're going to do bar dives, and you rookies are going to catch us. So I'm holding hands at the front of the line. My buddy and I are holding hands, and one senior jumps. We catch him, no problem. One guy, the last senior jumps, and I'm standing like this, and he kicks the side of my nose, and I headbutt my buddy, and blood just starts. Oh, my God. And we had to do pictures the next day, so my eyes are all like, they were actually black, because I think I broke my nose, but my nose is like here, and there's a cut on my nose. I went to the hospital, and they're asking me questions, and I was drunk, of course, like a couple too many wobbly pops, and in the report I mentioned, I'm like, I broke it before. If I would have just shut up, like the healthcare we had would have paid for a brand new nose. Oh, shit. Because I had Rose ready to go. Yeah, we're gonna fix it. And like, oh, you broke this before. Well, you're no longer covered. We don't have to pay for it. I'm like, shit. Yeah.
Wow, man. If I could get in, we could do a whole nother hour with college stories, but I think that's about it.
Yeah, it's probably a bad idea. I don't know what you're talking about. We're not talking about that.
Yeah, no worries. But yeah, thanks for coming on, man, and sharing everything with me. It's been good to learn more about you and see. I don't think I've ever met anybody who's had a bone marrow biopsy as well. So that's good.
It's crazy, right?
Yeah, man. I couldn't believe it. But they asked me, they're like, do you have any siblings? I'm like, yeah. And they said, are you? But they're all step. So no full siblings. So yeah.
Well, it was funny because
nobody's coming to save me.
When they did the blood tests and stuff there, they only gave us, I guess it's out of markers out of 5 out of 5. And it was just one of those things where like, because my oldest brother he also had cancer. He wasn't really a candidate, but they tested him as well. And the chances of one of us having a 5 out of 5 match was like 30%. And then the chance of all 3 of us being a 5 out of 5 was like 10 or 15%. It was such a, but we were all 3 of us were a 5 out of 5 match. Wow. So but they said to me, because of the history of my oldest brother having spina bifida, cancer, numerous surgeries, he just wasn't a candidate. So even if I was a 3 out of 5, they would have still taken my bone marrow over it and
dried it out.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Well, you know what? There's somebody looking out for us, and that was another thing. Is I picked up the Bible again after all of that, and just life changing.
You still read? I read every morning.
Yeah. Well, I use YouVersion.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it's a Bible verse a day, and guided prayer.
Yeah. I've seen. I think I've downloaded that. What I find is it's calming in the morning. So what I do is I wake up in the morning and I feed my cats, and then I
feed my dog. I let the dog out.
And I sit down and I have like this, it's daylight because it helps with energy too. Because my doctor said too, so because you're feeling lethargic today, just do the daylight because we don't have a lot of sunlight. And so I read 3 chapters of the Old Testament, and then once in a while I'll read like Proverbs, because Proverbs has 31 chapters, and you can read. So if you go correlate with the day, so for example, today's the 26 or whatever it is, so you read Proverbs 26. So every month you can read, so you read it every single day. So there's 31 days in most months. For example, March, you can read a Bible verse in Proverbs every day.
Wow.
And then you can read, and because it's a teaching, Solomon talking to his kids, what you should be doing, right?
Yes.
Like, and then I'll read 2 chapters in the New Testament because New Testament's smaller, right? So I try to do that. So once in a while, I won't do the Proverbs and I'll just do the Old Testament, the New Testament, but I do that. And then it sets me my day. I do my thank yous every morning. When I first wake up in the morning, I pray, say, because what happened with us, when you go through life changing experience like that, you have to thank God and say you're alive.
Oh, absolutely.
So I could have been dead. If I didn't listen to him, again, the doctor told me if I would have had the shot, I could have died. So I thank him every morning. Thank you for telling me that. Thank you for me being alive. Thank you for my family, my kids. And then you ask for things, help me in my business.
Yeah.
But it's
Give
it's
me
a way,
clarity. It's
but
the biggest thing, man.
yeah. So it's the funny things. The first things you do in the morning, it's all in reverence to God, right? I try to teach my kids that too, and say thank you. And what the Bible does is sometimes I'll be praying on something, thinking about. So I had an issue with my brother, for example, and we weren't talking. And I said, well, God, what am I doing with this? Like, I pray, how's this relationship? And that day, I remember reading, and it said in the Bible verse, it said, if your brother, and talked about your brother, if your brother sins against you or transgresses against you, forgive him, but tell him what he did wrong. And then forgive him. But if he chooses not to change, then so be it. Then you've done your due diligence. But the thing is, forgive him.
Yeah.
And I was like, it was like so prophetic how it was like right there.
Yep.
And it just kind of gives you a calming experience that somebody else is like listens to you when you. I hadn't prayed about that in a while, and I talked about that when I opened the Bible. Said, open up the Holy Spirit to enter me and to help me guide me through this. I'm having a problem with my brother, and this Bible verse came up. Like the first thing I read, and I was like, so it resonated well with me. And again, it calms you in the morning because I know the rest of the day is gonna be crazy.
Yeah.
But if you set yourself in the morning, and I said this in my own podcast, with gratitude and thankfulness,
Yes.
your outlook on life changes from that day forward. Now you're looking for things to be thankful for. I had an old coach. He said, his name is Rob Vivian. Every morning there's a phone call. He says, something awesome is going to happen today. Something awesome is going to happen today. Something awesome is going to happen today. And if you repeat those things, those 3 words, those sentences 3 times, your brain looks for things to be awesome.
And even try what would make today awesome.
Well, that's a good one.
Yeah, because it's in my gratitude journal. It says, what would make today awesome? And
That's
then
true.
once you verbalize that and put it out there, now it's like, okay, you're kind of almost looking for it.
Yeah. And it changes your perspective on life.
That's right.
And in our industry, when things go bad, people do doom and gloom. I'm like, well, what's your mindset like?
Yeah.
And people ask me all the time, like, how come you're so optimistic of the market? I'm like, I love real estate.
Yeah.
I think in every market, there's always a way to find it and to find the good in everything. So why always dwell on the negative? Let the media dwell on the negative, because that's all they do. They need to sell newspapers. Let them dwell on the negative. Let's be beacons of hope and be positive.
Yep. I sat in front of, 500, 800 people on stage and said, I don't care about market stats. I don't care about the market. There's no good market. There's no bad market. There's just good actions and bad actions.
Love that.
And everybody laughed, but I was, being genuine.
Yeah. Well, Tom Ferry says it the best way. The market's going to market.
Exactly.
That's it. That's it. The market's going to market.
Yeah. So that's it, buddy. I appreciate you coming down
Thanks for having
from
me.
Toronto all the way down to here to St. Catharines. So I appreciate it. This is a little bit of a plug section. Just, this camera here. Just tell them where to find you.
So the best way to find me, I guess, is you can do Instagram, David V. Cinelli _. So David V. Cinelli _ realtor. That's on Instagram, but I'm on Facebook. I'm on TikTok. Yeah, I'm on TikTok. But if you go,
good.
Yeah, if you go through my Instagram, you'll see that too. Like
You've got your link tree.
Yeah, I got my link tree, so links to everything else as well.
Yeah.
But DM me if you want to know anything else. Like Instagram is usually the best way to contact me. You can always call me and text me. I don't know if I give you my number, 416-876-9998. People laugh at me that I give the number. I'm like, it's everywhere.
It's everywhere.
It's everywhere. Go ahead. I have people text me random stuff and some weird stuff.
Time,
But hey, listen, that's part of our business.
of course, happy to do it.
Yeah, love it.
Okay, man. Well, thank you very much for tuning in today. Spotify, leave those reviews so that other people can, come across our podcast and learn for salespeople, business people, and anybody who's just generally curious about that fine life. And if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe, comment, share, all that crap. You know what to do. Thank you very much.